Why are there not more people talking about Kashmir? Nestled high in the Himalayas, Kashmir is a land of breathtaking beauty. Snow-capped peaks pierce the sky. Crystal-clear lakes reflect the azure heavens. It's a landscape that has inspired poets and artists for centuries. But beneath the surface of this paradise lies a deep and enduring tragedy. For over 7 decades, the Kashmir Valley has been embroiled in a conflict that has claimed countless lives and displaced millions. This is a story of a people yearning for peace and justice, their voices often lost in the deafening silence of the international community. The Kashmir conflict is not just a territorial dispute, it is a human tragedy of immense proportions. It is a story of broken promises, shattered dreams, and the enduring resilience of a people determined to chart their own destiny. The world has turned a blind eye to their plight for too long. It's time we listened. The roots of the Kashmir conflict can be traced back to 1947. The Indian subcontinent, after centuries of British rule, was partitioned into 2 independent nations, India and Pakistan. Kashmir, with its predominantly Muslim population but ruled by a Hindu Maharaja, became a point of contention. The Maharaja, facing an uprising and pressure from both India and Pakistan, decided to join India. This sparked the first Indo-Pakistani war over Kashmir. A ceasefire line, later known as the Line of Control, divided the region. The United Nations intervened, passing resolutions calling for a plebiscite. The people of Kashmir, the UN declared, had the right to self-determination. They had the right to choose their own future. However, this plebiscite never happened. India and Pakistan remained locked in a stalemate, each controlling parts of Kashmir and claiming the entire region as their own. The promise of self-determination enshrined in UN resolutions remains unfulfilled. The tragic irony of the Kashmir conflict is that it is not a forgotten conflict. The world knows about the suffering of the Kashmiri people. The world knows about the human rights violations. The world knows about the unresolved promises of the UN resolutions. Yet, the world chooses to look away. Why? The answer lies in the complex web of geopolitics. Kashmir is strategically important. It sits at the crossroads of South Asia, Central Asia, and China. Control over Kashmir gives India access to vital water resources and a strategic advantage over Pakistan. For Pakistan, Kashmir is seen as an integral part of its identity and a counterbalance to India. Global powers, instead of pushing for a just resolution, have often prioritized their own interests. The United States, during the Cold War, saw Pakistan as a key ally in containing communism. China, with its own territorial disputes with India, has been a steadfast supporter of Pakistan. These geopolitical calculations have often trumped concerns for human rights and justice in Kashmir. The Cold War cast a long shadow over the Kashmir conflict. As the United States and the Soviet Union vied for global dominance, regional conflicts like Kashmir became pawns in their geopolitical chess game. Pakistan, under military rule, aligned itself with the United States. It received substantial military and economic aid, becoming a key player in America's anti-communist strategy in the region. India, on the other hand, adopted a policy of non-alignment. It refused to take sides in the Cold War, seeking to maintain its independence and sovereignty. This stance, while principled, came at a cost. India found itself courted by both superpowers, but ultimately lacking the unwavering support that Pakistan enjoyed from the United States. The result was a stalemate. The Cold War dynamics prevented any meaningful international pressure on India and Pakistan to resolve the Kashmir dispute. The superpowers, more concerned with their own strategic interests, turned a blind eye to the plight of the Kashmiri people. With the end of the Cold War, there was hope for a renewed focus on resolving long-standing conflicts like Kashmir. However, the world stage has been dominated by a seemingly endless cycle of new crises. The rise of global terrorism, the Arab Spring uprisings, the Syrian civil war, and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine have consumed the attention of the international community. Each of these crises, undoubtedly tragic and deserving of attention, has diverted resources and political will away from resolving the Kashmir issue. The world, it seems, has a limited capacity for empathy and action. When faced with multiple crises, some conflicts inevitably get pushed to the margins. This is not to say that the world should ignore new challenges. However, it is a reminder that justice delayed is justice denied. The people of Kashmir have waited for far too long. Their suffering is no less real, their rights no less important, because other crises demand our attention. Despite decades of living in a conflict zone, facing human rights violations and enduring the apathy of the international community, the people of Kashmir have shown remarkable resilience. They have not given up hope for a better future. They have not given up their demand for self-determination. From peaceful protests to artistic expressions, from legal challenges to documenting human rights abuses, the Kashmiri people have continued to raise their voices. They have shown the world that their spirit is not broken. They refuse to be silenced. Their struggle is a testament to the indomitable human spirit, the unwavering belief in freedom and justice. It is a stark reminder that peace cannot be imposed from above. It must come from the ground up, from the people most affected by the conflict. The international community's continued neglect of the Kashmir conflict has come at a steep price. Generations of Kashmiris have grown up in the shadow of violence and militarization. The psychological toll on the people is immeasurable. The cycle of violence has claimed countless innocent lives, leaving families shattered and communities torn apart. The economic costs are also staggering. The constant threat of conflict has deterred investment and hindered economic growth. Tourism, once a thriving industry in the region, has been decimated. The lack of opportunities has fueled frustration and despair, particularly among the youth. The world cannot afford to ignore the human cost of this conflict any longer. The price of inaction is simply too high. It is time for the international community to recognize that there can be no peace without justice, no stability without a resolution to the Kashmir dispute. The Kashmir conflict is not intractable. There is a path to peace, but it requires the international community to finally act with the urgency and seriousness that the situation demands. First, we need to break the cycle of silence. World leaders, international organizations, and global media outlets must shine a spotlight on the human rights situation in Kashmir and demand accountability for any violations. Second, we need to revive the diplomatic process. The UN resolutions, while gathering dust for decades, offer a framework for a just and lasting solution. The international community must pressure India and Pakistan to return to the negotiating table and engage in meaningful dialogue. Finally, we need to listen to the voices of the Kashmiri people. They must be included in any peace process. Their aspirations, their concerns, their vision for the future of their land must be heard and respected. The world has ignored Kashmir for too long. It's time to act. It's time for justice. It's time for peace. Pause 2S. The solution for Kashmir lies in the UN resolution by plebiscite only. This chapter will delve into the importance of the UN resolution and how a plebiscite can bring peace to the region. Pause 2S. The United Nations resolution on Kashmir, passed in 1948, calls for a plebiscite to determine the will of the Kashmiri people. For decades, this resolution has been sidelined, ignored, and forgotten. Yet it remains the most viable path to peace and self-determination for the region. Pause 2S. A plebiscite would allow the people of Kashmir to decide their own future, free from external pressures and conflicts. It would be a democratic exercise that honors their right to self-determination. The international community must rally behind this resolution, pressuring both India and Pakistan to honor their commitments to the UN. Pause 2S. Implementing a plebiscite would not be without its challenges. It would require robust international oversight to ensure fairness and transparency. It would demand a cessation of hostilities and a commitment to peace from all parties involved. But most importantly, it would require the world to finally listen to the voices of the Kashmiri people. Pause 2S. The plebiscite is not just a bureaucratic exercise, it is a moral imperative. It recognizes the inherent dignity and rights of the Kashmiri people. It offers a peaceful solution to a conflict that has caused immense suffering and loss. Pause 2S. The time for action is now. The world must champion the cause of a plebiscite in Kashmir. It is the key to unlocking a future of peace, justice, and self-determination for the region. Let us not let another generation of Kashmiris be born into a cycle of conflict and despair. Pause 2S. The path forward is clear. The solution is within reach. The world must act, and it must act now. For the sake of peace, for the sake of justice, for the sake of Kashmir. Pause 2S. Support the UN resolution and advocate for a plebiscite. Your voice can make a difference.